Welcome to a fresh firmware install of firmware version 3.0.394. Of course, we're going to go through how I like to set everything up on a fresh firmware. Make sure after installing firmware and getting to the dashboard the first time on any router to factory reset. I actually like to do this twice. Granted, it adds a couple more minutes to the overall process, but if you don't factory reset at least once, you can run into old issues, and that's the last thing you want. So, first off, you've got your Duma OS agreement. If you have not read through the NetDuma Duma OS agreement, read through it and click agree. And then, of course, we just got our overall welcome. We can click start and start the process. It's going to say, hopefully, that it detected our internet. If for some reason it did not detect internet, reset your modem and try again. Of course, unplugging the Ethernet cable in between as well. Sometimes keeping it plugged in works, but try either or. Go through, click next. Of course, if you know your internet speeds, you can go ahead and enter them here, and I recommend to do so. And I know that I have about 460 download and about 22 upload. If you don't know your internet speeds, you should already have internet on your computer. Run a speed test and then enter those speeds. Run a couple speed tests because they can vary from, a little bit, and just kind of do that. Do some balancing. All right, so next. Username. Password. Yes, I will be changing this. If I can type. When it comes to Wi-Fi, of course, you can customize your SSID and password. I'm not going to worry about that currently. I actually have an access point set up to handle my Wi-Fi. That's not to say that the NetDuma R2's Wi-Fi is bad. It's just not great for as big of a place as I have. So I have another router connected running the Wi-Fi. Go ahead and submit that and go through the overall setup for Wi-Fi. Then we got to do time zones. So find your time zone and go ahead and do that. Automatic savings time if you want. Do you want NetDuma to collect info and make Duma OS better? Of course. Why not? And then we're going to go get in launched Duma OS 3.0 for the first time. For those who are completely new to Duma OS, what's great about NetDuma and Duma OS is they're able and willing and wanting to walk you through everything. And if you're familiar with it, it's kind of annoying, but if you're not familiar, it's so helpful. You get these little pop-ups, and you can read through what's going on with your router. So it tells you that Duma OS is a state-of-the-art router operating system designed to optimize your home's connection and reduce the instance of lag. And you click next, and it gives you more, and you can keep clicking next and find out more and more and more about each one of these things. Then you can click the X's if you kind of know, and all these little question mark boxes on each and everything will let you know some info about what's going on there. So super awesome, super helpful. Now, one of the first things I've noticed here when it comes to this fresh install is it's looking a lot better overall. Just visually, it feels like Duma OS is a lot crisper. Another thing that I've noticed is our public IP address is now hidden with the option to unhide it. That's pretty cool. For those who are unfamiliar, these little pin buttons allow you to pin and unpin things to this main dashboard here, which I think is really cool, and you can customize it your own way. For anybody wondering, oh man, I've had an error, our apps aren't loading, or you're seeing this on a first setup, I really wouldn't worry about it. It's kind of a thing that happens. Hopefully, eventually, that gets patched out. What I'm going to be keeping an eye on is, are our apps going to continue to fail over time, or is it just as things are launching off here? So this firmware, this issue is supposed to be fixed. However, it's just, a fresh install. Things haven't really been set up all the way yet. There has been no usage of the router yet. So it's fine. I'm not bothered by it. However, if I run into the issue again, you guys best believe I'll be making a fresh video talking about it. So let's go through some setup stuff. The Geofilter is what everybody is probably the most excited about when they get their Duma OS router. This is the thing that allows you to filter out bad servers and connect to good ones. If you're familiar with Duma OS already, such as myself, it's really easy to go through and set everything up. And if you're not familiar, we'll walk through some stuff real quick. Of course, you have what I just like to call the circle mode. It's your main mode. And this circle allows you to just kind of, this little home button down here, little thing, and you can put this circle really anywhere you want and adjust it accordingly via your distance. So if you want to put it just where you live, say, hey, I just want to play with some people kind of close to me like that. Or you have this other option, which is dropping it into the ocean. And then if you drop into the ocean and you decrease the distance to the lowest point, what that will do is shut off the actual filtering of land and filter the ocean. How do you filter the ocean? You just use your ping assist. So if you're familiar with what your ping is in general for most games, you can say, oh, I know I've got most games hit 30 millisecond ping, and I might have a game, like if I play a fighting game or something, it might hit like 50 milliseconds. I kind of know that from, just looking at the ping graphs that are built into games that I know. So you can just go ahead and set it to, like 50 milliseconds. Now you're only going to connect to games that have 50 milliseconds or lower. You might connect to one that's got like 51 or 52 milliseconds. No big deal. So that's really cool. Now, if you click these little drop-down menu here, you have some more options. You can go kilometers or miles, strict mode, and auto ping host. I like to leave those on. Pretty simple. Strict mode is just leave it on, okay? Auto ping host does exactly what it says. It'll automatically ping the host of your game. Super cool. Slightly inconvenient if you have multiple consoles going and you're trying to like click around, because you can click on individual servers and peers. If you want to do that, you actually have to unclick auto ping host, and then it will allow you to click around. Fast search does exactly what it says. However, even though it could make your search faster, it can also introduce problems in the long run with servers you don't want getting in, and you end up denying a lot more. At least that was my experience with fast search over the years of using it. So I tend to leave it off. However, tinker with it. See if it works for you if you decide to go ocean mode. Okay? And then you've got your overall polygon mode, which is your next thing. So you hit this little button down here, and you get this little drawing tool. And if you know where servers are, you can just draw around them and say, hey, I want to connect to those servers. Big note here. You have everything set up. You got your circle, you got your polygons, and you see a server, it seems like it's connecting outside of that. Those are called whitelisted servers. Those are whitelisted by NetDuma on purpose, because those are like authentication servers for games and authentication for PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, things of that nature. So if you see one of those and you're like, I'm not sure, you can always hit up the forums and ask them, kind of tell them, hey, here's the ID for that particular server that I saw. Is it a whitelisted server on purpose, or is this a game server? And sometimes you can just kind of figure it out yourself. So just make a note of that. If you're seeing stuff outside of your circle, or outside of your polygons, the things you've drawn yourself, could just be a whitelisted server, and so no worries. Hakuna Matata that. Of course, in the corner here, we've got the legend, so if you don't know what all the symbols are popping up, or you just forget, you can always turn on the legend. And then we have our add devices. Now, we have no device names yet, so we're not going to worry about that, but that's how you go through and you add your device. Pretty simple there. We'll get into that again here in a minute. Ping Heatmap. This is a fantastic tool if you're unsure of where servers are located for your favorite game. You load into Ping Heatmap, you select a ping target, and you say, I'm going to play that really bad Call of Duty Vanguard. I mean, I've heard, I don't know, haven't played it myself and don't plan to, but, you do that and it's going to ping all the available servers all around the world. And so you can kind of go around and say, oh, here's some servers. Here's each one. I know the locations. I can see the pings to each one of these servers. And then you can go back into the Geofilter, right? And you can use your polygon mode and say, I play Halo Infinite. I know there's a Halo Infinite server in Texas right about here that's got a really nice low ping because I just checked it out on that beautiful ping heat map. And you can just draw a nice little square or whatever you feel like drawing around that server set, and boom. More often than not, you will end up in a good server. Sometimes, if you're using ping assist while doing this, you can end up with something a little bit worse. So if you have drawn a circle or a polygon and your ping assist is anything above 0, it is also going to add on to that. So you can get servers that are outside of your area. So that's another reason you may be seeing servers that are like, wait, my ping assist is even 50, but I'm seeing a server that's like 75 milliseconds. That can still happen, especially with fast search on. So if you don't have your ping assist to 0 and you're searching for games, it could still search outside of your search area. So if you're just using, like, I know I want this Halo server, period. That's it. That's the one I want to get connected to. And if I time out trying to look for games every now and again, so be it. You'll drop it to 0. If you want to mitigate that timing out, you want to play games quick. You're like, look, I don't care if I get into a server that has a little bit higher ping than normal. I don't have a lot of time to play. You can adjust your ping assist and get into those servers that are outside of your normal range. So it's a really good tool overall. I absolutely love the Geofilter and ping heat map. I'm hoping at some point in the future there's like an overlay mode, so you can just overlay the ping heat map right onto the Geofilter, and that way you don't have to remember when you're going back and forth and remember where the servers are. I'm like, where was it at? Iowa? Hold on. Oh, okay. It was kind of on the border. Oh, okay. And then going back and like trying to figure everything out. There's an overlay mode at some point. That would be really cool, but that's just me bantering some. So that is the Geofilter and ping heat map. We'll go back through the Geofilter once we've got some actual device names. Quality of service. We've already started this a little bit. When you first come in, it's already set to auto enable. Auto enable enables your quality of service settings when you're in a game. As soon as it detects, hey, you've logged into said game, this little light down here will pop on. You're logging in, on. Then it's going to connect to your congestion control and your quality of service and turn on those settings. Always, pretty self-explanatory, your congestion control and quality of service are always on. Never, never. Pretty simple stuff overall. I'm pretty sure quality of service, the quality of service wheel or flower, whatever you want to call this thing, is technically always on no matter what you're doing with congestion control. I'm not 100% sure they're connected. So I think when you're using connection control, you've got that, and then quality of service is still handling things in the background regardless. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. I'd like to find out at some point. But anywho, so what I like to do is actually there's a couple options. You can use your auto setup, or you can just run a whole bunch of connection benchmarks and set everything up yourself. What you're really going to want to do is just go through your own settings. Run the auto setup. So if you click auto setup, you have some advanced options which you can go through and mess with. I don't necessarily recommend that. If you click it again, you can just begin your auto setup. This actually takes a couple minutes. We're going to run through it and see what happens. Auto setup previously in previous firmwares was finicky. Sometimes it would work pretty well on some days, and other days it didn't seem to work out great. I don't know what exactly causes that, but we'll run it through a quick one to just kind of see what it says. Real quick side note though, as you could see, from the beginning there when I was setting everything up initially, I have 460 down, 22 up. So let's do the auto setup, and this will take a couple of minutes. We'll just fast forward through all of it real quick, because otherwise you'll be bored to death, and honestly, it's gonna be boring for me. So let's go. Well, that took a few minutes, but we got some test results. It put my download and upload at 50%. Is that the best for my network? Maybe, but probably not. Here's the thing. Not me or anyone else on the internet can tell you what your best quality of service settings are. Nobody. You're going to have to do your own tests during the times of day that you play. So, my suggestion overall, you know that you play Friday evenings. That's your game time. That's when you play. Before you get on and play, run some tests. Run a couple connection benchmarks, which we'll get to in a minute. Run an auto setup before you play. Your ISP could be slammed. Neighbors could be on. There's so many variables when it comes to the internet that it's going to take time for you to run tests and figure out what your best settings are. Again, I can't tell you. All I can do is say, take your time, do multiple tests. Yes, it's kind of irritating, but once you figure it out, unless there's major changes at your ISP or you move or something like that, you should be pretty much good. So go ahead and save if you want to leave the settings that it chose for itself, and I'm just going to leave it there. When it comes to the quality of service flower or wheel or whatever you want to call this thing, I've said it before, I'll say it again, don't mess with it. Is it broken? No. Does it work? Yes. But there's no need to mess with it because it will automatically share your download and upload. So it takes care of everything for you. Unless you have really slow internet. Hey, some people do. If you have really slow internet and you got a few devices and you're like, man, I got an Xbox, I got a phone, I got a computer, and my internet, I live out in the sticks, bro. Hey, cool. Understand it. Then you're probably going to want to touch that wheel. But for the vast majority of people, leave it alone. Okay, connection benchmark. This will go right back to the quality of service. When you run connection benchmark tests, You're just going to want to let it do its thing and see if everything ends up where you want it. And you're going to, again, do this at different times of day with different setting scenarios. So different devices may be connected when you're doing this. Just kind of play around with it. It will really give you a good idea of what your actual best settings are for quality of service. Again, it's one of those things that you can set up to do scheduled tests, which is really cool. But I always recommend kind of going through and watching that yourself as well during different times of day. So kind of do both. Schedule some stuff for yourself during the times of day that, hey, I may not be around. Okay, example of this. Most Saturdays, you're kind of busy. But some Saturdays, you're not. Some Saturdays, you get to sit down, you get to play games. Nobody's bothering you. Kids are with the wife at the grocery store, whatever. And you're like, I got some game time. Woo. Hey, schedule the tests for those Saturdays. That way, when you come back, you can just look and like, oh, Saturday, I need to adjust because there's so many people on in my neighborhood or whatever the case may be. I need to adjust a little bit of quality of service settings to get the best results. And of course, we get A+ all the way through. So again, take your time, look at everything here, adjust accordingly, and you could really, really, really take your time here. And it can be a task, but it's well worth it in the end. So here's all your info. Pretty simple to understand. Super cool. Again, you can schedule tests if you would like to just by clicking the schedule. And it looks like they made that a lot cleaner as well. So that's super cool. We're not going to worry about that. Let's move on to the device manager. I've always loved the device manager, and they've continued to make it better. So, of course, you got your two different modes here. You got your tree, which is cool looking visually. But if you have a lot of devices, it can get kind of scattery. And then you have your table, which I always use table mode, which just kind of lines everything up for you really nice and clean. So there's my Xbox Series X and the other stuff. So actually, now that my Xbox Series X is turned on and populated, we're going to go back to the Geofilter and we're going to set up my Xbox Series X. So to do so, we're going to click Add Device, Xbox Series X, Next. And then there's Recommended by Game or Choose Manually. I always choose manually. You can do it by game. There's really no need. Filtering and then filtering off. Filter off when you're setting everything up. I don't know why they leave it on, but just turn it off until you're ready to play your game. Continue. Apply the settings. Finished. Now, when you load into multiplayer, so depending on what game you're playing, load into the multiplayer side of that game. If it's a multiplayer only game, you're pretty much good to go. Depending on what's going on with that game, there's a couple scenarios that can happen. If you are filtering already, your filter is on, you may not connect to those servers at all, and it just will keep kicking you out. That's one scenario. Another scenario, if you accidentally left it on, is that it won't do that. So it can be just different per game. I always recommend leaving it off. Wait until you're in the multiplayer menu of said game. Invite your friends, all those things. Filter on. If friends start having issues, click around to those friends by hitting the 3 bars, undoing auto ping host, right? And you're like, oh, I've got a friend that lives right there in Texas. I know he lives there in Texas. He told me. I'm in Texas. I'm in like that El Paso down there, wherever. Click it. Add him to your allowed list. Now he's a friend on your friends list on your console or game preference, and also on your router. Cool. All right, so that's the rest of quality of service and Geofilter, ping heat map, connection benchmark, device manager. Whew, that was a lot to go through. But the next thing up, one of my favorite features when it comes to the NetDuma R2 is the AdBlocker. Enable that bad boy. Leave it alone. I do recommend, depending on the console you're playing on, to maybe permanently turn off your console. It just depends. Sometimes it can have trouble. Sometimes not. So you can disable each individual device. So like I just disabled the Xbox. But for the most part, I leave it on. If you run into any trouble with any of your services, that is the very first thing to try. Come back to your ad blocker, pause it. Click the pause it for like 5 minutes. And then see if that service starts working again. You go, oh, there's the ad blocker messing with it. You can go to the NetDuma forums and say, hey, I have this device. When I use AdBlocker, it's causing this problem. Be as specific as possible, and I'm sure they'll get it fixed at some point. Of course, you can have your own ad block lists, which is super cool. And there's a white list and a black list, and you can add your own stuff to each. There's different ways to do that. I've discussed that before, and I probably will again in another upcoming video. But AdBlocker on, pause it if you think you're having trouble. Maybe pause it or disable it on your console. I don't have a PlayStation 5. Don't know how it works there. With Xboxes, it was kind of having trouble with the Xbox Store. Seems that that's been fixed. So no worries there. Network monitor. Cool stuff here. We can monitor our network. Self-explanatory. All the info you need is right here in the open. Easy to understand. If you want to look at a particular device, you can click on that device and the category breakdown will show up here. So I click the download side of this unnamed device, and now we can take a look. And I can also click the upload side and do the same. So super useful if you want to know if something's hogging all your bandwidth and you're like, what is that? What's going on here? Neato. Traffic controller. There's a few different uses for this, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You can control different traffic. You can put in a name, and we can capture the event. We can control the traffic on, let's say, the Xbox Series X, and then we could say we want all traffic to be affected, right? Or port ranges, applications, or categories. We're just going to do all traffic, right? And we could say, hey, I want to block my kids from playing Xbox, sneaking down to the Xbox and playing after midnight, right? It's the weekend. They have off of school. They want to be sneaky. What's great about the traffic rules in general is you can just kind of go wild and set up different rules for each device in your household. So if you got some consoles that are in your kids' rooms and you're like, I don't want them turning it on after 10 o'clock at night. They're supposed to be in bed. You can say 10 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning, their internet is shut off on that Xbox or any particular device that you want. So you can block or allow or just straight up reject traffic for different devices depending on your time rules and day rules here. Super cool tool. I use it to block my kids' stuff on the weekends and weekdays when they're not supposed to be on. So after like 7 o'clock at night, when all the homework's done and everything, I want them to calm down. I don't want them on their laptops anymore. The internet automatically goes off via the traffic controller. And so from 7 o'clock at night to like 6 o'clock in the morning, they don't have internet. 6 o'clock, it turns back on, and I don't have to come and do anything. It's automatically set up for all the days of the week, including the weekends. So super useful tool, especially if you want to adjust individual devices depending on your household's usage. Hybrid VPN. Self-explanatory. It's a VPN. And if you use VPNs, it's super useful. They keep making it better and better and better. I don't really use VPNs this way. I do mess with them depending on what I've got going on, but for the most part, I haven't messed with the hybrid VPN stuff within NetDuma OS. I need to mess with that more, so I'll get to that at some point. Maybe? System information. Pretty self-explanatory. All your system info. And so, you can kind of just scan through everything, your CPU usage, your overall status, your RAP status and stuff. And then we have our network settings. And network settings, again, self-explanatory. It looks like they did add a couple things here. So tech support kind of got moved. VLAN 2 with an ID is new. Of course, we can go around and look at our overall network. Wi-Fi. Again, I was using and am using a Netgear. I get those confused because they both start with net. Netgear XR500. Excuse me. And for my Wi-Fi. So I just turn off the R2's Wi-Fi completely. Oh, actually, I turn off mirror mode. Totally forgot about that. And then I turn off Wi-Fi. I don't like mirror mode. There's no need for it. You can use it if you want. Guest Wi-Fi, you can leave it on, leave it off, leave whatever. Just mess with it if you need to. DHCP. This is something that I think comes in handy for a lot of people, but they don't use it. In your DHCP settings, I would recommend giving at least your consoles a reserved IP address. So, make sure to just know what devices are on and choose an IP address that's available. What honestly I like to do is just kind of number them 1, 2, 3 per each device, so I can just kind of know my main devices. Here they are. They just have simple numbers that I remember, and then I just do a reset, not a factory reset, but just a reboot of the router so everything gets flushed out and is proper. So that's another way to go through it. I'm not going to mess with it right now because I obviously have a few more devices that I need to go through and set up. And I'm not going to bore you with all that. UPnP, hey, there's your UPnP stuff. If you need it, want it, there you go. I would suggest just leaving it on. There's no real need to turn it off. A lot of people mess with port forwarding. Just don't. It's a hassle. UPnP works. There's no real security concerns. I wouldn't worry about it. And static routes, if you need them, you know what they are. If you don't, no worries. I don't, no worries. Port forwarding, again, just don't mess with it. Use your UPnP. It works just fine. Network settings on the WAN side. Let's go over that. So we can, of course, use the upstream DNS, or we can add our own DNSs, which I do like to do. And I like to use Google. Doesn't everybody? You can use Google, or you can use 1.1.1.1, which actually is another great service for DNS. So either or. Either Cloudflare or Google. Then save it. Super. Well, looks like a few things have changed visually. They've made Duma OS a whole bunch sharper, and I like that. It looks good, and I'm really excited to see as they continue to work on everything what the future holds. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with everything here. Setup was smooth and easy. Looks a lot better overall, and I can't wait to really dig in to see how everything plays, because that's the biggest thing. And I'll update you guys in the comment section in a couple of weeks if I remember, like, hey, firmware is working really good, haven't had any issues. I might even make another video. All right, everybody, until the next time, later.